Hey Soccerheads, Connor here, and I'm starting a new web series where I'll just be covering some random soccer topics that I think are interesting and hopefully you guys will enjoy. So, here we go. Alright, so the first topic is Paul Pogba versus Graeme Souness. Graeme Souness is an analyst for Sky Sports News over in the UK, and he has been very critical of Paul Pogba's play during his time at Manchester United. Now, keep in mind that Graeme Souness is a former Liverpool player who had a very successful career with them and won a decent amount of titles. So, Paul Pogba recently was on the Manchester United podcast where he was asked questions about what's it like when analysts are very critical about him and say, mean things about his play. So here's the audio from that, and I'll let you give that.
If I was you, I'd have sent Graeme Souness a picture of myself with the World Cup trophy.
Just say, yeah.
Thanks, Graeme.
I didn't know who he was really.
Yeah.
I didn't know who he was. I heard he was a great player and stuff like that.
You didn't even know who we were.
And I say the name. I know the face, but the name.
All right, so I'm going to come out and say that I am on Paul Pogba's side on this because I felt like his comments were justified and not that disrespectful. But here is Graeme Souness on Sky Sports News and talking about his response towards Pogba's comments.
Take that criticism on the chin. So to come out and say you'd never heard of Graeme Souness, I thought was, really was below the belt.
That was a big build-up, Cara.
I'm happy with that.
Graeme can show him the medals. Not a World Cup medal, but he can show some
exactly
other medals.
The oldest thing in football comes to mind. Put your medals on the table.
He's got a few, Graeme. He's got a few.
So now I'll show you guys a close-up of how Graeme wears his AirPods and how he really feels on the inside talking about put your medals on the table. Alright, so the medals are on the table. Let's check them out. Souness has 6 more medals than Paul Pogba. And the difference between them is that Souness has 3 Champions League medals, Pogba has 0, and Souness doesn't have any World Cup titles, but Pogba has won the World Cup. Now, I think that the World Cup is the pinnacle of the soccer world, so I would say that the World Cup trumps the 3 Champions League trophies. And when you take into account that 3 of Souness's medals are the Community Shields, that might make you think a little differently. But I'll leave these numbers here, and I'll let you decide your own opinion for it. Now here's a fun part. I'm going to read some of Graeme's famous quotes about Pogba, and just to save a little bit of time, I'm going to paraphrase, and you can pause the video if you want to read the full thing. In my opinion, Man United had their trousers taken down by paying $100 million. He may be a player one day, but as of right now, I'm still waiting to be convinced. September 2017, I want to see Paul Pogba do what Fellaini does. Pop it off nice and simple. I'm not saying Fellaini is a better option. What I'm saying is he's a bigger threat. He's more effective. That's the question mark I have against Pogba. He's got technique. He's a bit of a YouTuber, isn't he? A bit unfair, I'd say, comparing Pogba to the greatest midfielder of a generation. August 2019, Souness says he's glad Lukaku is gone, and he doesn't want Pogba in there either if he's not up for the fight ahead. Now, this season in Serie A for Inter, Pogba is the 3rd leading scorer behind Immobile and Ronaldo. In February, he says, I see him dancing at weddings, shooting hoops, and the cynic in me thinks he doesn't want to be at United. I do agree a little bit with Graeme here. Pogba tends to go overboard on social media, but when you're recovering from an injury, I'd say try to tone it down a little bit. And the final one in March, Pogba's attitude to the game is a polar opposite of mine. He goes out with one thought in his mind. I'm going to show how clever I am, and I'm going to be the star of the show. He'd be an absolute doddle to play against. Alright, I'll leave you guys with the final video showing both the players' highlights, and maybe being the polar opposite of you, Graeme, isn't the worst thing.
la puissance. J'ai pas connu la défaite depuis mon existence. Gros, je m'en sors bien, si jamais raculé. Parle en français, parle au cache, prends tes distances. Ramenez-moi la tête, je reste quand on passe à table. Qu'est-ce que tu parles dans ta zone, t'es qu'un guetteur. Ceux qui pensent nous connaissent, ne connaissent pas. Moi, t'as toujours d'être comme les bacs dans mon secteur. T'es dans la merde, je suis au fond de la carte VIP. C'est pas ta sur la dèche. T'es mon adversaire, t'as pas de chance. Tu veux tèche, la bouteille à la mer. Où sont les vrais? Ceux qui parlent paix, frappe fort. À la fin de tous les gestes, tranquille-toi et laisse-moi faire comme les secrets. La puissance.